How's it going, everybody? In this video, we'll be replacing the tie rod ends on this 2015 Kia Optima. Alright, so normally we would break the lug nuts loose, jack the car up, put it under the jack stand, and then take the lug nuts out, but I'm going to jack the car up before I loosen the lug nuts so I can show you that the wheel is wiggling left to right. Alright, so the lug nuts are still tight, and the car is jacked off the ground. So if you grab the left and right side of the tire, see how bad that shake is left to right, and there's no shake up and down. So if the wheel is moving left to right, it has something to do with the tie rod, most likely. All right, with the wheel off, now we can shake everything left to right again, but look for what is actually moving. Right there, you can see that the outer tie rod end is loose. And the inner tie rod back here appears to be tight, so that should be good. All right, the first thing we want to do actually is to remove the caliper. We'll just take the two nuts loose and slide it out of place. That'll give us a lot more access to the actual tie rod, as well as when we go to remove the nut and the front of the tie rod end here, we'll have to hit it with a hammer, which it's not in a good location. It's located directly under the caliper right now. Some other cars, you won't have to remove the caliper because the threads for the tie rod end come out the bottom, so you can just swing with the hammer from the bottom. Or if you need to use a puller or the fork, it's going to give you a lot more room if we just slide this caliper out of the way, and it's going to make things a lot more easy. So there's only two bolts that we need to remove that we can slide the caliper out of the way. It's just this one on the top and this one on the bottom. So we'll use a 3/8 ratchet with a 17mm socket. We could go 1/2 inch, but the brake line is in the way right here and we would run out of room. So we'll just slide that on there and we'll break it loose with a hammer. Just get it started and then go to the bottom one. All right, now we have better access to the tie rod, and we see here in the front there's just a retaining clip that needs to be popped loose, as well as this nut. And then in the back here, here's a lock nut that can be broke loose, and this back side should spin off. So before we remove the old outer tie rod end, we should compare the new one to the old one, make sure that everything is correct, the length's correct, everything's in the right location, the bend is correct. And here we look to be perfect. All right, with everything still tight, we should be able to get in here and tighten the lock nut back here just a little bit. That'll give us a gap so that we can loosen the tie rod end. So we'll have to push it towards the back of the vehicle. Okay, and we don't want to loosen it too much because this is part of our alignment. So when we put things back together, we want to make sure that we have the same amount of threads that we had when we started. We only have a little bit of a gap here, so we can just tighten that on once the new unit has been installed. All right, with that back broke free, we can remove the cotter pin here. Just pulls out with some needle nose. We won't be reusing this as our new unit comes with a new cotter pin and new assembly. After we've removed the cotter pin, we can remove the nut. It is a 14mm. I'm going to try and reach it from the top with a 1/2 inch ratchet with a long extension. Okay, so I'm going to keep the nut on there just partially because we're going to be hitting it with a hammer. So we can straighten this out a little bit by twisting the back here, and then I'll start hitting it with the hammer. Okay. There we go, she popped down. So we can just remove the nut and this should pop down, and then we can loosen the rest. Good. Slice out the way. And we're still spinning a little bit. If we grab it with the wrench. And there we go. All right, now we can install the new unit by screwing it in place. Good. Now we'll realign the front of it and put the nut in place. And there's a hole here for the cotter pin to go in. So we'll screw this nut down as far as we can until we can insert the cotter pin. And the new nut is a 17 millimeter. All right, so we'll look for the hole where the cotter pin goes. It's right there. You don't want to over tighten it because if you go down too low, then the cotter pin won't even hold the nut in place. So we'll just go a little bit overhand tight. And we'll stick our cotter pin in place. And we'll bend it. All right, then we can put our caliper back on. All right, and they gave us a little grease fitting here, which is a 7 millimeter. Just goes on the bottom of the tie rod right here. There we go. Let's go hand tight on this. Good. All right, we'll do a shake test, left to right. Up and down. Good. All right, everything is tight. Now we can throw the tire back on. Good. All right, now that we have one side done, we can move to the other and do the same thing. I hope you found this video helpful and informative, and if you could, please leave a like and subscribe.